Preciados amigos y amigas, qué alegría que estemos todos juntos aquí en la Iglesia de Todos los Santos. Dear friends, what a joy it is that we are here together at All Saints Church. Mi nombre es Mike Kinman. My name is Mike Kinman, soy Rector. I'm the Rector. Mi pronombre él, my pronouns are he, him. It is wonderful to have you be a part of All Saints Church this morning. First thing we want to say is if you are in an evacuation zone from any of the fires, please check in with us and let us know what you need. I'm going to put right now the pastoral care emergency line in the chat. And just know that you can call that. It is being monitored. And we want to know sort of that you're in the zone. We need to know particularly when or if and when you evacuate. And also, is there anything you need? You know, we delivered someone a wheelchair last week because they knew they were going to need that if they needed to evacuate. Please just let us know what you need. We'll come together and we'll make sure that everyone is taken care of. Speaking of making sure everyone is taken care of, our Sunday food table is continuing to work with Hope Kitchen to provide prepackaged sandwiches and water on Sunday morning. Today, we gave out 31 sandwich boxes and 50 masks, thanks to Erica and Gail for coming out this morning for this ministry. We're also continuing to live in solidarity with Learning Works Charter School, which is an amazing community of teen scholars escaping from gang life, homeless teen parent and pregnant teens, living in group homes. When you go shopping, if you can just pick up some extra non-perishable food items, diapers, wipes, formula, and drop them off at Learning Works, 90 North Daisy, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 p.m. Again, that's Learning Works, 90 North Daisy here in Pasadena, between 9 and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Every week we have a partner in love who is someone who is doing really wonderful work in the community that in addition to supporting All Saints Church, we urge you to support. This week, appropriately enough, our partner in love is the California Community Foundation's Wildlife Relief Fund. The CCF's Wildfire Relief Fund supports both midterm to long-term recovery efforts for those affected by California wildfires. Since the Wildfire Relief Fund opened in 2003, they have granted more than $24 million to support relief and recovery efforts in the aftermath of devastating wildfires. Excuse me, it's been a long week. So please click here and click on the chat, make a gift to the CCF. It should say Wildfire Relief Fund. I think I probably typed that in wrong. So if the next time the panelists, if you could correct my typing and make sure it's the Wildfire Relief Fund. We actually don't need relief from wildlife. Wildlife does generally pretty well when we don't get involved. Anyway, that's in the chat. If home is not a safe place for you, let us know. There are resources also in the chat feature for the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the Trevor Project. This Sunday is our 4th Town Hall Forum about the 2021 budget staffing and program plan that the Vestry passed a week ago last Tuesday night. And I want to begin with a prayer, as we have with all of these that we've used throughout the process with the Warden's Planning Task Force. So God dwells in you. God, we abandon ourselves into your hands. Do with us what you will. Whatever you may do, we thank you. We are ready for all. We accept all. Let only your will be done in us and in all your creatures. We wish no more than this, O God. Into your hands we commend our spirit. We offer it to you with all the love of our heart, for we love you, God, and so need to give ourselves, to surrender ourselves into your hands without reserve and with boundless confidence, for you are our God. Amen. Okay, well, I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to open just with a few brief thoughts, and then I'm going to hand it over to Terry Knowles and then to our wardens, and then we're just going to open it up to your thoughts and questions. First, just a few words about who we are as a church, because some of this has come up, because this is about a restructuring, and it begs the question, well, what is central to us? And this is something that I love to talk about because it really is about what makes us different from other organizations. We are not, as Jim White likes to say, just the United Way with better music. We are a community of faith and followers of Jesus. We are first and foremost a body that comes together in worship. doing what we're doing this morning. Worship has been, is, and always will be the center of everything that we do. It's also the source from which everything springs. Now, just as we are drawn to All Saints Church by many different things, we are drawn to worship by as many different things as there are people at the table. We come for solace, we come for challenge, for sanctuary, we come to give, we come to receive, we come to be changed. We also come to hold on to that which is changeless. And here's the thing about worship. Whenever we talk about worship, it's always a we. Now, individually, like I can have a spiritual experience, or you can have a spiritual experience. I can pray. Any of us can do any number of things in private, and it is wonderful that we can, and it's wonderful that we do. Coming together in worship as a church is always about the community. It's about what we do together. Now, lots of communities worship in different ways. As followers of Jesus, the center of our worship is the open table of Christ. And this is where we hear those words of George Regas over and over again. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you are welcome to come where? To Christ's table, to receive the gifts of bread and wine made holy. We're not just sort of welcome in general. We are welcome specifically to come, to approach the table, to take our place, to lay our lives in offering, and to receive grace upon grace and love upon love. And then we replicate this act at every table we gather around, every physical table, every virtual table. Every one of those tables, a vestry meeting is an act of worship and self-offering. A meeting of a ministry, a small group meeting, when we gather at a bedside, when we're able to do that. These are all tables of worship. Worship informs and feeds our learning, our sharing of community, our action in the world. And it's connected to it. We do a dismissal at the end of the service, and usually a deacon does this because the deacon's job is to really straddle the community and the world. And so the purpose of that is so we can take what has happened in here out into the world, and then we can lay new tables out there, or we can see where God is already doing that laying of tables in the world and gather around. So we are reorienting ourselves into circles because that's the shape of the open table of Christ. It is collaborative, it is energizing, it is creative. And all circles spring from the circle of worship, and worship contains all the other circles. So as we talk more and more, and Terry's going to talk about this in a moment, about these circles of community and learning and spiritual growth across the lifespan and progressive intent into action, know that these are not things that are siphoning off energy and resources from worship. They all spring from worship. And also remember that Scripture tells us that all of those things are worship too. I think about Isaiah, and Isaiah says, "Isn't this the fast that I have chosen, to break the chains of wickedness, to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and tear off every yoke? Isn't it to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the poor and homeless into your home, to clothe the naked and when you see them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood?" Those acts of kindness and compassion and community, that's worship as well. We've also had some questions about the people who are losing their jobs in 2021 and how are they being cared for. Well, that's also a piece of our worship, is caring for each other, not turning away. I can't get into details about what is being offered to people. And I want to say again, we are doing everything that we can to care for people. People who are owed sabbaticals are getting those sabbaticals. People are getting generous severance offerings. We have set aside $15,000 for outplacement counseling, and that's resume writing, job counseling, LinkedIn profile, online counseling, also, access to job databases. People have access to unemployment insurance through the payments through the Diocese of Los Angeles. And we're going to be, really keeping up with people to try to make sure that they are okay. And we're particularly looking at our lowest wage workers that we have had to let go, and making sure that they are going to be okay, and seeing what do we need to do to continue to care for them. And then finally, this has been brought up several times, and I'm really glad it's been brought up, and people have said, really sort of, what about the rectory? What about that house that I and my family live in? And, is that something that needs to be on the table? And of course, the answer to that is yes. The rectory is a piece of property. It is an asset of All Saints Church. Frankly, it is a creature of another era of a church, a different era of the church. As an asset, like any asset of the church, the question is, how is this asset best used for the mission and ministry ongoing of All Saints Church? So part of what was presented to the vestry with the 2021 draft program staff and budget plan were ideas and things that we need to start working on this year so that this can be a bridge to 2022 and beyond. One of those was we need to continue our work in making sure that we can be a wedding destination. And that can be a stream of income for us, is hosting weddings. We need to make sure that as the film and TV industry comes back, we are ready we're sort of COVID ready, and that we know what the unions, everyone is saying, this is what we need in a location shoot, and we're ready to provide it. And in 2021, I'm going to be getting together a group of people who know about real estate and know about asset management, and really ask the question, say, let's take a look at the asset of the rectory. And let's make some recommendations of what needs to happen to it to make best use of it for the ongoing future of All Saints Church. And so that is part of what will be happening. So I'm really glad that that question has been raised. And it's something that it needs to happen. We need to look at every part of our life and say, what is it that is going to help us best thrive, not just survive a pandemic, but thrive in the years to come. And these are a lot of conversations that we're going to have, and they're going to be creative and fun conversations. And with that, I just want to turn it over to Terry Knowles. Terry, you had a couple comments based on things that have been coming to you and some things that you wanted to share.
Right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. We've been getting some questions about the circles. You've all seen the graphic in Mike's presentation about the circles. What do they mean? How does it work? Why are they a good thing? How are they going to make All Saints Church better? I don't have all the answers, but I've been thinking about that and wanted to just offer this for you to think about. I joined All Saints Church in 1992 when I moved here, and for any number of years, I was, as I fondly refer to myself, a pew sitter. Didn't do anything, just worshiped at this beautiful church and loved doing that. And then I became more involved, and I was on the vestry for a little while. And one of the things that I noticed was that I couldn't find my way into the organization. It was opaque. There was a shut door at every corner, and I couldn't figure out how it was organized, which was sort of distressing to me, but because I was not on the staff, it wasn't the biggest problem in the world. And then I did join the staff in April of 19, about 17 months ago. And so 17 months later, there's still a lot that I realize I do not know about how it works at All Saints Church. You've heard us talk about, I think we made this word siloization, and if you recall looking at the organizational chart that Mike showed in his presentation, likened it to the directions to set up your VCR, which resonated with me anyway. That's a vertical sort of siloed way of, and typical in a lot of organizations, as you know, of organizing staffs. And it does not encourage cross-fertilization. It doesn't encourage collaboration and teamwork in the most productive way. Now, part of the issue, I think, at All Saints Church is the campus. We are spread around the whole campus, so we don't see each other coming and going a lot. I love Melissa Hayes and don't see her but once or twice a week because she's way off in another corner of the campus. And that's just the way the place is built. But maybe that campus structure is encouraging this siloization thing just a little bit. The circles model is sometimes also referred to as a matrix model, and this is a model that, you can see this visually, that encourages, even really demands, collaboration within the circles and then where the circles intersect in the middle, so that teams who are working on projects or programs are built from people in each of the circles, and then they collaborate in the middle. I am very excited about this model for us. I am certain that this will make us a much more transparent organization for you, as well as for those of us who work there. Exactly what it'll look like is what we need to figure out. There are parishioners around us who have experience working in organizations that are structured this way. And we're going to put them on camera very soon to just talk about their own experiences and why it is such a good way to organize people who are doing work, serving a mission, and serving the population in the way that we are. So stay tuned for that. But I just want to reassure you that this is a very, very good change from my point of view anyway for All Saints Church. And I look forward to telling you more about it. And I think you're going to be excited about it too.
Thank you. I want to remind you that you can put your questions or thoughts or anything in the Q&A feature. We're still looking through. There we are. Hi. In the Q&A feature. So that's wonderful. Let's do that. And so before we get to those questions, one of the members of our Wardens Planning Task Force and a Vestry member is Julianne Hines. And one of the many gifts that Julianne brought to this process is that she has had to work with somewhat similar, I mean, with the same economic situation, let's just put it that way, and go through the same things with another organization, which is Planned Parenthood of Pasadena and San Gabriel Valley, which, by the way, fantastic organization, longtime ministry partner, give to support Planned Parenthood, especially right now. And Julianne, I know you can't talk specifically about situations with Planned Parenthood, but can you sort of talk generally about what are the learnings, sort of the cross learnings that you've had between these two processes? Because we're both, you know, mission-centered organizations trying to survive and thrive in a really challenging place. So could you sort of talk about that for a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, you know, since I've started working at Planned Parenthood, we've been through a number of, you know, changing external atmospheres and economics. And interestingly, the first big one of them for us really was when the Affordable Care Act was passed and started to finally come into fruition, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it really changed the nature of what things looked like for community health healthcare providers, and changed how we had to operate and changed the funding mechanisms. And so it was a moment of time where we really had to look at our business model and weigh, you know, what were our values and our mission, and does this change our mission? And what we really came to through a lot of really deep reflection with the leadership of the organization, with the staff, and with the board of directors of the organization. What we really came out with was that, no, our mission is really solid and really needed, but what it was really the how we were structured needed to change some, and that made for really hard decisions. And it was also in a place where we weren't 100% sure exactly how this was going to turn out, which is very similar to what All Saints, the position All Saints is in today, and quite frankly that Planned Parenthood and most of us are in today. We don't know how these things are going to, we don't have like a solid path forward that we know how this is going to turn out. And so we have to be prepared and figure out, like, how can we both be nimble and flexible, and then also know that we've got sort of an emergency plan if the worst case scenario is to come true. And so, you know, we went through a number of processes of really figuring that out and saying, what is that sort of contingency plan that we're going to put in the closet? We're going to, you know, be really, you know, look at the worst case scenario and be realistic and say, you know, if the bottom falls out and the worst happens that we wouldn't want to happen, that we still have a plan and that we're still going to be able to serve our mission and live into our values regardless. And then put that away and then say, now let us plan for how do we flourish and how do we really serve the community that we're in to the fullest degree that we're able to with what we have today, and what we, how do we start building to create the future that we want for tomorrow and next year and the next decade. So it's really been that combination of being very realistic about and having a plan in case, and then saying, but let's not focus on that, right? Let's not make that be, let's not bring it into life. Let's have the plan and then set it aside, and then let's say, what do we want to bring into life, and what do we want to occur, and to really focus on that and put our energy into that. And so that is just, I think, been so reflective of the same process that All Saints has been through this summer. And I think it's something that, you know, we continually are having to sort of do that. After the 2016 election, kind of had to go through it again. And we're, you know, preparing for that again now with the upcoming election, and just always saying, how do we both be realistic, but then also really like be prepared and make plans for how we take advantage of the opportunities before us. How do we lean into and really best partner with and with the community around us. So is that kind of what you're looking for, Mike?
Yeah, no, that's great. And it just is, you know, and this is what I'm finding as I talk to clergy colleagues, not just around this area, but all over the country, is frankly, not every church is doing this work. Most places should be. I will say most of my colleagues are having to do this work, really wondering, is my church going to survive this pandemic? And that's what I mean. You know, Planned Parenthood is fortunate enough to be part of a larger national organization that, you know, at least right now is not, I hope, let us know if we are, because we got to get support Planned Parenthood if this is true, is not sort of worried about, are we going to make it through the next year? And we have to do this, but many churches, I talked before about a Barna study that said that they're thinking that as many as 1/3 of mainline churches may close in the next 18 months directly because of COVID on top of other economic and societal factors. And so, you know, as I've talked to colleagues about the work that we're doing here, many of them have sort of said, wow, that's really great you're doing that work. We wish we had the luxury of doing that right now. We're just trying to figure out how to stay open. And we're so blessed that All Saints isn't in that place, and we're nowhere close to that place. So that's good. And across the board, everyone's having to do this work or should be doing this work. We have a few questions, and I also want to see, is there, and you know, these can be questions about anything. These can be things that you're happy about, that you're excited about. They can be dreams that you have for All Saints Church. This doesn't just need to be about the budget and program and staffing plan. Want to go to Juan and Monique. Anything that you want to add, or anything that any of the other Vestry members or
Sure.
Wartime Task Force people want to talk about?
Good morning, Mike and everybody. First of all, I want to thank Julianne for her tremendous leadership on the Vestry and on the Wardens Planning Task Force. This is her first year as a Vestry member. As people might not know, but your term as a Vestry member is 4 years. And usually the first year, you're just trying to figure out what the heck's going on and figure out how the sausage is, as they say. But she just has been an amazing leader, especially with the work on the Wardens Planning Task Force. And I just wanted to thank her. Other than that, I don't really have anything else. We want to get to some questions, but I think I saw, well, first, before I go to Steve,
I wanted to speak.
I want to go to Monique. Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to thank Julianne. And I just wanted to say that I know that we're going through all these changes and it feels very scary. It's like we're in the wilderness and figuring things out. I do think that we're going to come out stronger on the other side, and this process will take a while. But I just wanted to say, you know, I started attending All Saints about 15 years ago. And I, like Terry, I was just sort of sitting in the back of the church on the side and not really that involved. It took me a while to get involved. And then once I did, my involvement, whether it was through racial justice, new member class, when it was called new member class, all of that was an extension of my faith and my worship. And so I think that, you know, we are creating these circles and there are changes that are happening, but it's all, worship is still at the center of All Saints. It is still the primary value of what we do. And I feel like all of this, you know, the other work that we do is an extension of that worship, an extension of the faith in the community. So just wanted to sort of reassure people of that. And again, through this process, please reach out to Mike, to us as the wardens, to the vestry with your suggestions, ideas, anything about that, because we're trying to do this together, you know, as a community. And so we value your input as well.
Thank you, Monique. Steve has his hand up.
I know, and I always take a little bit of something for doing that, but I did want to express something that had to do about the circles and why I was really excited about it, and I am excited about it going into the future. One of the things that I see about it is that just the nature by a circle, its strength. It's a much stronger structure. And I think that in this particular case, one of the things that the Warden Planning Task Force and Mike, in terms of his directive to us, was to really to try to come up with a central theme that the church could really embrace in 2021, that we could all really get around to and support. And out of our discussion, it came up to, and it was actually not just our discussion, but it was kind of thrown in our face that racial justice, white supremacy, and our education in dealing with reconciliation and all those issues are going to be our theme for 2021. Well, if we look at the circles and the way they exist, and there's an assumption prior to the circles that, one, the organization of the church is a collaborative place. And that's not necessarily so. And I not just All Saints, but any church I've actually been to, that everybody's kind of on their own edges in their own sort of spaces. And it makes it really difficult sometimes. And my example to you is this, is that in order to embrace this theme and actually to make it really effective, having the circles where there is overlapping support and overlapping organization, it allows people to collaborate on one central theme and to figure out how they can bring that in to their own mission and their own organizations to see how that works. An example, we've had a racial justice ministry at the church. We've had an advisory board, but we have not incorporated it into the throes of the church. We all know that it's the issue. We have peace and justice that has done social justice, but here we have a theme that ultimately we can collaborate on saying, how does all the ministries that we have at All Saints incorporate a racial justice theme? Even from the standpoint of climate change, we talk about climate change, but we don't talk about its effect on marginal communities. We don't talk about how it plays out in places of justice. We know that ultimately it is something that we need to appeal to. Same thing with whether we have a gun ministry. We have our children. We need to be bringing up the racial justice themes from the youth. And they have really stepped out, right? Because they were the ones that took on the gun lobby, that took on those. And we need to say that they're advocates and they're good spokesmen. So the circles basically say that each one of our ministries, whether it be the beloved community, children and youth, our administration, will all be common vested in this central theme throughout the year. I guess that's what makes me excited about it.
Thank you, Steve. We're going to jump into some of the questions, if that's okay, Mike. I want to go, actually, I'm going to read a question from Facebook. We're streaming this on Facebook, our Facebook page as well. So this one's for Mark. Why, especially during these days of technology, is the technology budget being cut in half? If anything, we believe the Sunday services need to be enhanced and more professional. The outreach budget that will be $57,000, is this to reach out to better advertise our church and invite visitors to grow the church? If not, why not? Online ads, mass mailings, especially in the new communities that people are moving into Pasadena. So I'd like to address that a little bit. The communication budget from 2020 to 2021 is actually increasing by approximately $10,000. The IT budget, there was some savings that were identified by our director of technology that we don't need to reinvest in 2021. And there were a lot of departments. The staff was amazing in helping us find places where we could save money. For example, buildings and grounds. told us where we could save a lot of money because of a lot of supplies that were purchased for 2020 that we weren't going to use because we weren't gathering. We didn't need to repurchase a lot of those types of supplies. So there was some savings there. Same with IT. I don't know the specifics of it. Maybe
So
Terry or Mike could.
I can talk to that about that a little bit. And this is where we just gotta, like, one of sort of the unsung heroes of All Saints Church is Nader El-Dahabi, who is our Director of Information Technology. And we say, if it matters, go to Nader, and we do. We were actually ready to say this is a year that, despite the economic challenges, we need to invest in technology for all the reasons you're talking about, Mark. But what's happened is we've actually done a lot of that investment this year. And there have been technological upgrades that have been happening all year while we're in pandemic. And a lot of that IT budget is about hardware and upgrades that are happening right now. And so, we went to Nader and said, Nader, what do we need to stay on track to be excellent in terms of IT? And he actually said, based on what we're doing this year, he's the one who came up with the figure that we could reduce that budget. The other thing to understand is there is an item that's really, really important that is not represented in this budget, and that's the website. And we have a team working right now. We have a web developer that we have contracted with. This has come out of quasi-endowment funds. And so you are going to be seeing a whole new All Saints Church website that replaces the one we have now, which was really only supposed to be an interim placeholder website. And we're deeply grateful for the people who designed that and have sort of maintained that. A whole new website with much greater functionality. So this is one of the things when you look right at the budget, you say, oh, wow, you're not investing in technology. That seems short-sighted. We actually are investing in technology. We're doing a lot of it this year. And then there's that huge piece of the website that just doesn't show up. What we did increase is the budget for maintaining the website. We increased the budget for streaming, and we increased other budgets for communications. The reason that we funded the website out of quasi-endowment is a recognition that the website is essentially bricks and mortar in today's world. And that this is something that does not need to be funded out of program budget, but it should be funded the same way that we fund improvements to or changes in the building and grounds.
The other piece of that, Mike, if I can just add, is that
Go for it.
we are also, we will be engaging in a communications audit, which is also a part, it's already been budgeted. It's a comprehensive audit, which really tells, looks at how are we reaching our audiences, what are the most effective means that we're using and tools, and how we can do better. So I think that will be really helpful in terms of reaching new audiences, because we'll at least know what's working, what's effective, and where we need to increase. Oh, and on the next question, I'll ask the next question. Let's see, this is actually, will we be getting instructions about lining up our cars for homecoming, traffic pattern?
Yes, and see if Melissa Hayes is on here. I believe what we're doing, and this is going to be great, we're going to do an online, not an online, it won't be online, it'll be a drive-through commissioning. And so this is what's going to happen next Sunday between 9 and 10:30 a.m. Before our festive homecoming service begins at 11:15, we'd love to see everyone for a safe, socially distanced commissioning. All you're going to do is you're going to drive north on Euclid. So here's the traffic pattern, Nancy. You're going to drive north on Euclid, right in front of the church. You're going to stay in your car. You're going to receive a commissioning and greeting from our staff and church leaders. We're going to be lined all along Euclid. And just you're going to drive by slowly. You'll get a greeting and a blessing. We'll probably asperge your car with something. You can decorate your car if you want, share your joy. And then we're going to have one service for homecoming. It'll be a bilingual English-Spanish service at 11:15. There'll be a different link to join the stream as, wait for it, we're going to be streaming from inside the church. And so for everyone who's been wanting to see the inside of the church again, homecoming, we're doing it. We're going to be streaming from inside the church. And again, thank you for the team of people, Keith, Melissa, Nader, others who've been working on how to do this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You'll go to our live stream page on the website for that link. Yes, the traffic pattern will be driving between 9 and 10:30 a.m., driving up Euclid, and then be at your computer at 11:15, and we're going to do a socially distant, safe homecoming stream from inside the church.
Next question from Flor. With the 2021 budget, would All Saints be able to maintain the 4 services, 7:30, 9, 11:15, and 1 p.m.?
Well, the 2021 budget is really assuming that we're not going to be back in the church for most of that year. And so that seems sort of like a 2022 question, and we'll have to answer that as we come to it. Certainly, our hope is that we are able to maintain what has been, what has been important and central to the life of this community. I will also say that it's always, we always want to look at where is God calling us in new ways to grow, and we don't know where that's going to happen. So, from a budget standpoint, our hope is that we will always be able to have the worship that we need, and because worship is central to the life of the church, that will always be a priority. What's that going to look like post COVID? We don't know. We don't know, for example, when it being safe to come back and gather as a church is likely not going to be like flipping a light switch. And so if we get to a place where we can only have, or maybe it's safe to come back, but particularly people in older populations and more vulnerable populations feel like, I don't really feel like it's safe to come back. I want to continue to just be on the safe side watching something from my home. Then we'll have to maintain a streaming service, which I think we're going to keep doing. But then we sort of have a question of, do we need all 4 of those services if we have a significant number of people who do not yet feel safe coming back to church? So like everything else, we're going to have to grow into it. We're going to have to listen deeply to each other. And that's really going to be about what you all as a congregation, and also the people out there who haven't even found All Saints Church yet. It's like, what do we need to do to bring people not just inside into a worship service, but more deeply into the life of this community? So it's a lot of what we're going to be discovering together.
I am going to read a comment and then a question. So this is a comment by Sandy Anala. I'm very impressed by Julianne Hines. I know of her efforts from my work from Planned Parenthood Riverside. She's an outstanding resource for our community. I agree, Sandy.
Amen.
Outstanding resource, yes. And then the next one, it's a statement too. It says the movement design program needs more explanation. And I'm just asking, Mike, is this posted? I know that we're posting things online.
We haven't yet. We need to post it. We need to post sort of the 2-pager on the movement design program. And really appreciate everyone, Susan Russell, Jason Luckett, Keith Holman, Melissa Hayes, everyone working on our website, trying to get Terry Knowles, trying to get everything up there. And I'll try to speak briefly about this. That's always a challenge for me. And part of it is the heart is that word movement. I love that our presiding bishop talks about the church as the Jesus movement and the Episcopal Church as the branch of a Jesus movement. And what that reminds us is that our faith started as a movement. Now, movements gradually become institutionalized, and that's a necessity because a movement can't sustain itself generation over generation over generation without having some sort of institutionalization. And institutions generally reach a point where they spend more resources on perpetuating themselves as an institution than on being movements which are creative and alive and dynamic and transformative. And so as a church, we always need to be saying, what does it mean to get in touch with our roots as a movement? And how can we look at the movements that are out in the world and connect ourselves with them? And that's what the Movement Architecture Project is. It's recognizing that the heart of All Saints Church is that we are a movement and that we're a community where movements can be born, and we're a community that can connect with movements that are being born out in the world, movements that are transformative, both of human hearts and of institutions. So here's how it's going to work. All Saints has long been a place where we have held 2 things. We have held a progressive theology that pushes the boundaries of what following Jesus is in many, many different ways. And we've also been a place of progressive action where we have been out in the world, founding organizations in the streets, doing the hands-on work of living out our faith that needs to be done. What we heard a lot from you all and from staff is that there isn't always a clear link between the 2. And so we started talking about this in terms of how do we grow movements? How do we start with articulating a progressive, multi-faith, because we invite all faiths and peoples into relationship, multi-faith theology about something. And as Steve talked about, what the something that we're starting with is really what does it mean to dismantle white supremacy, to be actively a anti-racist beloved community. And we're going to be bringing in people from outside the community, scholars, Christian scholars, and what we're calling professional or practical activists, practical theologians from different faiths and from the Christian faith to work with us as a community to say, how do we articulate that theology? And then once we have it, we're going to be using this new learning across the lifespan, learning and spiritual growth across the lifespan organization, so that we're going to say, okay, what does it mean when that theology gets planted in our hearts from the youngest person at All Saints to the most senior saint? And we pray it and we study it and we talk about it and we let it challenge us and say, what does it mean if we truly believe this? What does that mean for our life? And then we have someone that we're going to bring in called a movement architect. And this is someone who has experience building social movements that are actually impactful and that build change. And that person will help us, not just with the learning piece of it and the praying through the piece of it, but to say, let's identify an action that we can either take internally as a community within ourselves, or an action that we can take out in the world that will attack one of those pillars that's holding up this oppression, that will proclaim the year of Jubilee in a scriptural term that says, this is the year when those who have not will receive again and debts will be forgiven, and will come to terms with our past in a generative, life-giving way. So what the movement architecture program is it is focusing us as a community on a theological task, bringing in amazing people, both from without the community and lifting them up, identifying them in our community, doing the work of prayer and study and learning, and then translating that into action. And as we do this, we're going to develop a model, and that model will be transferable so that other faith communities can do the same thing. So it's a gift that we can give to the wider world of, here is a way that if you want to do more than just a book group or an action or something here and there, if you want something that is going to galvanize and mobilize your community, both by itself and with partners, to make a real impact, both internally and externally, here's what it is. And I'm already starting to have conversations with people around the country who are interested in this, who are interested in being a part of it, looking at models for this. You can tell I get excited about it by the way I talk about it. And so that, this is what this is going to be. We're going to get a more succinct description of it on the website. But this is a way to put structure on something that our best All Saints has always become, which is a movement church where movements are born.
Next question, Mike and everybody, is from Karen Robles. How are we serving the deaf and hearing impaired community?
Wow, that's an excellent question. And I know, I don't know where we are in this. I know we've been trying to get, we would love to have sort of a little box, like right here somewhere, where Lynn Aponte or someone else who's been wonderful in the past at our 9 o'clock service of providing sign language, ASL. We have not been able to sort of parse the technology with that. There's also closed caption technology that we can have. It is something that we are working on, and it's a huge gap right now. And so, Karen, thank you so much for bringing that up, and it's something that we're going to continue to work on.
Next question, this is from Edna Trigg. Hi, Edna. I love the idea and practice of a drum circle. Are there any other such convenings on the horizon?
You're going to hear a lot more about small groups. The drum circle is actually a worship offering. And part of it is because we know that drum circles are spiritual experiences. And just a little bit about that for people who aren't familiar with it. This is something that's going to be starting this Wednesday. We did a test run before, and I want to make sure I have all the right information about it. So this Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the north parking lot, this is going to be sort of a debut of a new worship offering. It's a drum circle. We're blessed that Brunel Anderson connected us with Brother Gerald Rivers. He is an amazing leader of West African drum circles. He'll be joining us every other Wednesday. Every other Wednesday, we're going to have a time of connecting with God and each other through drumming. And this first week, we may be able to expand it. This first week, we're going to have spots around 40 people, socially distanced, wearing masks. We're going to have protocols, much like the ones if you've gone to the Huntington, get your temperature taken, make sure you wear a mask, get a squirt of sanitizer. The spots will fill up on a first come, first served basis. We'll open the parking lot at 5:45. And if you don't get a spot, you're welcome to stand outside the parking lot, 6 feet apart and masked, and watch and dance. And we'll take a free will offering at the end for Brother Gerald's time and skill. And it's a chance for us to gather together in community in new ways that are safe. Because this is a worship circle, a worship offering, the only limit to attendance is the space that we can offer it safely. So it's sort of the how many people can you get into the parking lot safely, socially distant. What you're going to hear a lot more about starting next week is small groups. And there are going to be ways that you can either gather yourself in small groups. You can say, hey, I want to get together with a group of friends of mine who we used to get together all the time. We haven't. We'll have protocols and structures for doing that. If you say, hey, I don't really know a lot of people, or I want to be in a small group, but I don't really know how to do it, there'll be ways to sign up for that. There can be affinity small groups, or hey, I want to read a book together. We want to talk about this. There's an issue we want to look on. We can have small groups that are for contemplative prayer. All of these will be meeting either online, because some people want to meet online and that's the only way that they can meet. And then also outdoors, socially distant, masked. And so those are going to be more and more opportunities. We're going to use homecoming as a way to sort of do an initial sort of blitz and launch about that. From homecoming through the end of September, there will be a chance for people to sign up, and we'll sort of have a first round of signing up for small groups. If you miss the first round, that's okay. There'll be a second round and a third round, and so on. And there's going to be more and more opportunities like this. There are groups like Holy Rakers, which does a wonderful job caring for the facilities here, that have work days that, again, there's protocols for showing up. We can do outdoor things safely. More and more things like that are going to come up. And what we're hoping is once we get the protocols out there, that you all can feel free to gather and create. And the most important things are, we need to keep the groups 10 people or less, 10 people or fewer. Everyone needs to be socially distant. Everyone needs to wear a mask. And you need to, take your temperature beforehand and make sure that you're not exhibiting any symptoms of COVID. Falling within those boundaries, there's all sorts of different things that we can do. In November, the lawn will become available again, and we're going to be looking at ways that we can access and use the lawn. So that's some of this. I can't give you sort of any specifics. And yeah, we're going to be looking for lots of different ways to get together because we are so deeply hungry for contact with each other.
The next question, Mike, and the group is basically asking for an update on the Safe Haven program that we've launched at All Saints, and it's from Mark. And he says, I've been advised by other members of All Saints that there's been smoking of drugs, possibly crack, marijuana on campus, an excess number of bicycles on campus that do not correlate to the number of folks staying at All Saints. It was suggested to me to inquire of what security All Saints may have, as we are open to the possibility of unfortunate circumstances as a result of criminal and reckless, possibly impaired judgment. At a time when we are reviewing our assets, we need to be responsible and cognizant of our stewardship. Thank you. So, Mike, we have been working with Union Station. For those that don't know, we've launched the Safe Haven program, which is on our website. People could look at it. Could you give us an update as to where we're at and address specifically the questions about the possible use of the drugs and the bicycles, and where we're at with the lockers?
Right. So again, I'll try to be brief, which is hard for me. So we are in a phase right now where we're pretty much ready to identify the 12 people. The Union Station has been working with us and with First United Methodist Church, who is our initial partner in this project. They have produced a grant proposal, which they are giving to a couple different organizations that are interested in funding us, that would fund between the two churches a full-time caseworker, social worker that would work with people here. And the Building and Grounds Committee is going to be making recommendations. We have options for lockers. We already got a $25,000 grant from the Pasadena Community Foundation. Building and Grounds will be making a recommendation to Vestry. Vestry meets on Tuesday. And then it's a matter of ordering the lockers and getting them installed. They're actually, I think, going to be installed where my parking space now used to be. I'll park in the lot, that's fine. And we'll have lockers there. That will give people, again, we'll be able to go down to just 12 people. Those people will have places to store stuff during the day. In terms of, I want to talk briefly about the drug use and about bicycles. And a couple things. First of all, we have an open campus. We do not have people here 24 hours a day. We had security here 24 hours a day in July. It was prohibitively expensive. The community that lives here knows that smoking and illegal drug use on campus is not allowed. And they do a pretty decent job of policing it, and they do not do a perfect job of policing it. And what we tell people is, if you see any illegal activity on campus, please let me know, let Sally Howard know. If you feel safe, take a picture of it so we can have it, so we can identify who people are, and we can do that work of policing it. And you know, what I will say is, in terms of drug paraphernalia found on campus, earlier in COVID, that was a much bigger issue than it is now. It is not the same issue it was. Is there still occasionally? Yes, just, I mean, we're a downtown area. Occasionally that happens. I do not take this lightly. I think it's incredibly important to maintain the safety of the campus. And this is something we're aware of, or something we're working on. And when you have an open campus, particularly a campus that has areas like behind the church that are obscured from view, we found that even when we had 24-hour security here, we had instances of drug use on campus. The only thing that really retards that effectively is when you reactivate a space, which is why we didn't have these issues when the church was fully open and business was happening and church was happening. So, you know, as COVID ends and the space gets reactivated, those problems, you know, will be less and less. And, you know, as I talk to colleagues of mine in Pasadena, you know, especially ones who are in downtown sort of urban areas of Pasadena churches, this is something that we are all taking care of. Another thing that we're looking at is having cameras installed, hoping that will be a deterrent. So there is no perfect solution to this. Right now, our security is what it has been before COVID, which is a patrol in the evening and a patrol in the middle of the night. And so, you know, that's what we're working on right now. We're working with our neighbors, Alexander Steakhouse, the apartments, the Westin, CPK, Plaza de las Fuentes. They all have my cell phone number, and when there are issues, they come to me. So great question, and it's something that we take seriously, and we're gonna keep working on it. The bicycles, yeah, part of what that is, it's almost a cottage industry. It's people bring bicycles on that are broken and have been discarded, they repair them, and then they can use them or sell them, and then they cart the parts off to the dumpster. And that really is sort of an income source. And yeah, we're trying to sort of work with it. And it's people trying to have some economic opportunity that they don't always, there are very few economic opportunities for them. The bicycles that are showing up, they're not stolen. We actually had the police come and sort of look and say, and they said, no, these aren't stolen bikes. So that's what's happening with those.
Thank you, Mike. I think we might have time for one more question, but I first wanted to make a comment. We just got word that evacuations are starting in North Arcadia towards the Chantry Flats. So it's just something to lift up and be aware of. Along with the previous question, Sandy had asked what we can do as a congregation to help our unhoused community members that are staying on campus.
So first of all, a good person to ask that question to, and I can is Erica Tamblin. Erica Tamblin is the chair of the Safe Haven task group. She's been working with Risa Worthy-Deemer and Kelly Aaron O'Phelan, and I'm going to miss people, as you know, Sally Howard and a whole bunch of folks on that. I think one of the, like when it gets really hot, we've been really wanting people to come and drop off water and ice. And so as it gets into the 90s this year, you know, we'll get Erica's contact information. She sets up people to do that. Frankly, one of the best things that you can do, 10 a.m. on Thursday is a community meeting, and just come 10. It's in the south area of the church underneath the big tree, where most people are staying because of the shade from the heat. Just come and get to know people. These are members of our community. the best thing that we can do for these members of our community is to get to know each other and to incorporate them into the community. And based on that relationship, we're going to learn how to love each other, and we're going to learn how to help each other. So, what I would say is, anytime you feel like dropping by and just stopping, right in front of the Plaza de los Fuentes and that sort of south area of the church and saying, hi, my name is whatever, I'm a part of the All Saints community just like you, just want to introduce myself, just tell you that you're loved, learn some names, and just even have like a 5-minute conversation. That's the most important thing we can ever do, because it changes it from saying, how do we help the homeless, to saying, wow, these are members of my community and I know their names and I know their faces and I know their stories and they know mine. And then we can talk about what does it mean to live in community together. And that's the conversation that life really comes from. So just come on by and say hi and bring some water if it's a hot day.
Mike, just a point of privilege. I was going to ask a question, but
Great.
First I wanted to remind everybody, the Vestry meets on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. There'll be a link on the website. Everyone's welcome to come and watch your Vestry at work. I had a question about Celebration of Ministries. Is that something we're still going to have? And the second question is, when does the giving campaigns kick off?
Well, I will say Celebration of Ministries is absolutely happening. It's happening the weekend after homecoming, which is not next week, but the weekend after. And then the question that would follow that is Blessing of the Animals happening? And yes, it is. And we're going to figure out what that looks like virtually to do a Blessing of the Animals. It may be another sort of slideshow parade or whatever, but we're going to figure out some way to do that. So those
Mike,
two things are happening.
The creative group has already started talking about the Blessing
Excellent.
of the Animals. We've got some
Excellent.
really cool ideas. So it is happening and it's going to be fun virtually this year.
Great. And then I'm going to kick the giving question over to Terry.
I have to go get an animal quickly, obviously.
Want one of mine?
I'm a Met Scout and I don't think so, but thanks for the offer. The 2021 Giving Campaign launches with Mike's sermon on Sunday, October 18. You will, in the prior few days, have heard from Mike when he asks for your support for the 2021 plan. It is delayed this year. It is later than usual, and I'm sure you're all waiting with bated breath for it to start in the late September, but it'll be a couple of weeks later. And we ask you to be thinking about it now. Thank you. Good question.
Monique, you want to ask a question? Do you have anything at this point?
I don't have anything. I want to say it's bittersweet. My heart is heavy with a lot of the decisions and things that we've made. And we've been working on this work for months and months. I do feel light at the end of the tunnel though, like as we're talking about Celebration Ministries and the Blessing of the Animals and just how we're reimagining church and continuing to do that. I feel just in my own spirit, something is being lifted and I'm feeling hopeful. I'm feeling hopeful for the first time in several months. I'm so excited about what Kelly Aaron has been doing and about the meditation chapel. And I just think that, for me, I'm feeling more positive. So it's not an easy road, but I think as a community, we can get through it together. And I'm just trying to focus on the blessings and the good things that are happening. So.
Want to say a little bit about forums. We're going to take a break for a couple weeks. We won't have a forum on homecoming, and part of it is because we're going to be having that commissioning, that drive-by commissioning. And then also the next week for Celebration of Ministries, we won't have a forum. Forums are going to kick off for the season in October. And so we're going to be having a forum the first Sunday of October that will be, Blessing of the Animals. We're going to have a forum there. We're entering the home stretch to the election. I'm sure none of you are thinking about it. And in addition to the presidential election, there are a whole bunch of really crucial ballot initiatives that will be on the ballot here in California and here locally. And we're going to spend that forum the first Sunday in October really looking at those ballot initiatives, having some conversations, educating ourselves. We are a 100% voting congregation, and we are working on, 100% of this congregation needs to be registered to vote, who's eligible to vote and needs to vote. So we're going to be diving right into that with our first forum the first Sunday in October.